Pearl, Marty, thank you for the singing, the good singing. Appreciate that. Sounded very good. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the help with the breakfast. Those of you who helped and those of you who helped clean up, we appreciate that. It's like many things here. It is a team effort. There's a lot of people involved in every part, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate your presence today. So our title today is When You Walk into a Room. When you walk into a room. Now, I'm going to just mention a couple of things right here. One, this title actually comes from a little excerpt of the preacher at Life Church. Okay? He was saying something I happened to see on Facebook, and so I kind of took a thought that he said for our title. That's the first thing. Second thing, the scriptures that we're going to read here in Jeremiah, you're going to wonder, how does this title fit these scriptures? And hopefully by somewhere through this I can draw an application from the scriptures to this thought. Okay, that's my goal. Everybody with me so far? Okay. So our scriptures are from Jeremiah chapter 29, and we're just going to begin reading these, okay? And we'll just kind of comment as we go along here. Jeremiah, so this is the prophet Jeremiah speaking here, in essence his words from the Lord. And so just so you'll know, and we're just going to look at the first 11 verses, but just so you'll know, these words are actually a letter that Jeremiah writes as a prophecy and from the Lord to a large group of Jews who had been taken captive or taken as captives by the Babylonians, and they were taken from Jerusalem and taken to Babylon. So he's writing a letter to them. That's kind of the gist of what we're reading here. So he begins, verse 1, Jeremiah 29, verse 1. Now these are the words of the letter. So here we have that right off the bat. He's not writing home per se. He's at home writing to those who are not home, who have been taken somewhere else literally against their will. Now these are the words of the letter that Jeremiah the prophet sent from Jerusalem unto the residue of the elders which were carried away captive. I want to stop here for just a moment. So he's writing this letter to these captives, to these prisoners who have been, in essence, and they're not exactly imprisoned, but they have been taken away from their homes, taken away from their homeland, taken to a far country, taken to a people who were in no way like them, who had strange gods, strange ways, a different language, and here they find themselves there. And he's writing this letter to them. And it is a letter of encouragement. In fact, it is a message of hope to these people. Now, and this residue, you know, that's an interesting word, residue. It is a small group. is the idea. It is a remnant. It is a small part of a larger segment of population, so to speak. And as believers, as Christians, sometimes we feel, and sometimes this is true, we are a small group many times in the broader population of our city, our state, our nation, or our world. And so sometimes we have to adopt a new way of thinking when we see that. Now, he describes this small group, this residue. This is a letter from him from Jerusalem to the residue of the elders which were carried away captive, and to the priests, and to the prophets, and to all the people whom Nebuchadnezzar had carried away captive from Jerusalem to Babylon. Now, not to go into a great history lesson, but because of the people's sin, because they had started openly worshiping other gods, idols, turned away from serving the living and true God, God said, here's what's going to happen. And he told them. He told them in the book of Isaiah. He tells them here. In fact, the first several chapters of Jeremiah are him preaching to these people and saying, this is what's going to happen. Jeremiah is often called the prophet of doom. He kept telling them, Babylon is going to overtake you. Babylon is going to conquer you. It happened. And this happens in stages. And so he's writing to the first bunch, and I don't know how many thousands these were, but Nebuchadnezzar and his, right-hand people came in, they looked at these Jews, and they said, we want you and you and you. They picked out the cream of the crop. They picked out the best. That's what we have here. Do you know that? We have the best. We really do. But that's what he did. They looked for the highest intelligent ones. They looked for those who were skilled in some kind of craft or trade. And they picked out all of these people and carried them away to Babylon and thought, hey, we can use these people. They'll come in handy, and they bring great things there. So that's who he's writing to. Now, there was a later actual conquering of Israel and Jerusalem, and others were carried away then also. But here's the first batch. Verse 2. And this is a little parenthetical thought, okay? And that Jeconiah the king and the queen and the eunuchs, the princes of Judah and Jerusalem, and the carpenters and the smiths were departed from Jerusalem. These are the ones they took. Now, verse 3 gets back to the main thought here. Jeremiah sent this letter by these two guys here, by the hand of Elisah, the son of Shaphan, and Gemariah, the son of Hilkiah. Boy, anybody named Hilkiah here today? If you are, you're not telling us, huh? Okay. So anyway, he sent it by these, and another parenthesis, whom Zedekiah, king of Judah, sent unto Babylon, to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. Okay, so that's the salutation. Boy, that's a long salutation. And I just say, Dear John, or Dear Mom, or whatever, but he gets with it. So now we're ready for the message. Okay, we're ready for the letter. So verse 4. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, unto all their carried away captives. Now notice this next phrase. Whom I have caused to be carried away from Jerusalem unto Babylon. We live in a time, we live in an age where if something goes wrong, we got to blame somebody. You notice that? You know, if something doesn't go right, we've got to find fault. Who's responsible? I mean, this is true in businesses. It's true in our jobs. It's true, something goes wrong at the house and we start looking, of course, I always blame the girls first, and so we'll say, all right, which one of y'all did this? And the answer is not me. You ever heard that? Not me. Not me. We have spent years looking for not me. We haven't found her yet, but we know she's somewhere there in that house because she's doing all of this stuff. But that's just, I guess it's probably human nature. We just look for somebody to blame. Whose fault is this? And what have you. And I'm sure when these people, now these were the elite, these were craftsmen, these were skilled people and educated people that were carried away first. And I'm sure when they opened their eyes in Babylon and saw all that they saw, I'm sure they probably thought, this ain't home. They probably thought, as we say today, this ain't heaven. And they began to say, whose fault is this? Whose fault is this? And, when we do that, a lot of times, just like not me, we start pointing blame. It's not my fault. It's somebody else's fault. And that's probably what they did. They probably said, well, it's the king's fault. The king did this. Let us hear. Let us into all of this. Or maybe they thought, it's the priest's fault. They weren't doing their job right. And on and on and on the list goes. Now, it was the fault of a large majority, I'm not going to say all, but it was the fault of a large majority of the Jewish people because they had drifted into idolatry. The nation, as we would say, as a whole, a large majority. We talk about majority rule. How many times in history has the majority been right? Not too many times. And so, yes, they could realize what it was, and they could realize why they were there, but the bottom line, and God wants them to know this, I have caused you to be carried away. Yes, the nation has gone, or a large majority of the nation has gone against me and away from me, but I am the one that put you where you are today. And sometimes you and I need to be reminded. We can look back in our lives, and we can look at mistakes we've made. We can look at decisions that we've made that may not have been the best, and we can say, I'm here, or I'm facing this because of what I did. And that's true. But the bottom line is, whatever it is we're going through and facing, God has a part in that, and God is going to use that to help us. And that's what he's saying to them. Now, he is writing to the ones that now, I don't know what they were the day before, but now they're looking back at God and they're realizing he's the one. And so he has a message for them. So he says, I'm writing to you, I'm the one who caused you to be carried away from Jerusalem unto Babylon. Now notice verse 5. This is his message. Captives, strange land, strange people, strange ways, a new day. They woke up in this, and he says to them in verse 5, build ye homes or houses, and dwell in them, and plant gardens, and eat the fruit of them. In other words, settle down. Settle down in this land. You're going to be here a while. You're going to face this for a while. Settle down. You might as well enjoy life from this point forward. Now, remember, he's writing to adults, many of them older adults. Many of these adults that he's writing to will not see Jerusalem again. Some of them may, their kids may, or their grandkids will, but some of these people will not. And so he says, settle down. Just, hey, grab the hoe, get out your lawnmower, get out the fertilizer, plant your gardens, plant your yard, fertilize everything, mow your yard every day, build you a nice house, settle down in this land. Become part of it. Now, he goes on, verse 6. Take you wives. Some of these he's writing to, not even married. Take you wives and beget sons and daughters, and take wives for your sons then, and give your daughters to husbands, that they may bear sons and daughters, that you may be increased there and not diminished. Don't just give up and die. Don't just sit down and say, oh, woe is me. Don't have that pity party. And sometimes in our lives, there are those times that we would like to have that pity party. And I'm sure all of us get to points like this. Not that we just start boo-hooing, but sometimes we just kind of get down and depressed, and things are not going like we'd like for them to. And we can let that eat on us. But he says, don't do that. Get over it. And I know that's easy to say, and I'm not saying these things lightly to anyone facing a horrible situation right now in their lives, but work through it. Find that strength from God, and by His grace and by His Holy Spirit, begin to stand back up. Begin to lift your head up and look ahead. So he says, do all of this. Now, I like this where he says, get married and have kids and have them get married and have them have kids and on and on and on, From time to time I hear, or I haven't heard this lately, I'm not around too many newlyweds lately, but, I used to hear this a lot. People just get married and, in their 20-something, and, they say, well, we've got our careers to get going, and said, we just don't want to have, we don't have kids, right? And that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But then they say, I don't want to bring kids into this god-awful world. It's just a horrible time. And things are bad everywhere, and I just want to bring kids into this. It's always been bad. Yes, it's worse, maybe we could say, or it's more in our face now, but evil is evil, and there's always been evil, and God has always said, multiply, bring children in. They're the ones that might be able to change some of this. And not that this was actually part of the sermon, but that's one of the reasons I guess you'd say, pro-life, or not abortion. Only God knows what that little embryo, or what that little life that's inside someone, what they can do, what they might discover. So that's one of the reasons I'm pro-life. Who knows, in some of the millions of babies that have been aborted, was one of those the ones that could have discovered the cure for cancer, or 1,000 other things? But anyway, that's another story. All right, and verse 7. So he says, get involved, settle down, build houses, get married, become part of the establishment, become part of the daily life there. You don't have to agree with everything or follow all their practices and behaviors, but become part of nature, become part of life with those people. You know, we live among all kinds of people today, and you can be part of everyday life of people's lives and not condone everything that they say, think, believe, or do. And you don't have to be in the stick in the mud to do it. So he says, get involved. And then verse 8. I like verse 8. Or verse 7, excuse me. And seek the peace of the city, whither I have caused you to be carried away captives, and pray unto the Lord for it, for in the peace thereof shall ye have peace. And that word peace is the Hebrew word shalom. In other words, he's saying, don't be against everything that they're doing. Don't be a rebel rouser. Don't be a troublemaker. Don't be a protester of all things that are going on. Get involved with people. Be a decent person. Be a good citizen. And the New Testament teaches this same stuff for you and I as believers today. We need to be good citizens. I appreciate all that Barbara does with reference to the voting. I think everybody should vote that can, you know. And just, you know, even if Michelle votes for one person and I vote for the opposite, so what? We've expressed our thought. We've expressed what we believe is right. So get involved. That's what he's saying here. Get involved in life. And then the peace. And so shalom. You know, when in Israel, Pearl, you've experienced this, Johnny, they greet each other all the time. Shalom. Shalom. You know, we today, some people say hello. Some people say good morning. I say howdy. And maybe a lot of other things. But you know, whatever you use, the words we use, we're just saying hi. You know, kind of. Howdy. I think howdy came from how do you do, maybe? I don't know. Something like that. That's kind of a request. But when they say shalom, they're not just saying hi. They're not just saying good morning. Good morning is boker tov. You know, broke your toe or something like that in Hebrew. They're actually saying peace. Peace. Hope you have a good day. Hope you have a peaceful day. Hope there's peace in your life today. On Fridays, prior to the beginning of the Sabbath, on Friday evening, they say Shabbat Shalom, peaceful Sabbath. You know, have a good Sabbath. Here he's saying, be at peace. And you know, the only way we can be peaceful is when we are at peace with ourselves. And so he's saying, you've got to come, you've got to get away from blaming somebody. Oh, it's their fault that I'm here facing this. That's what he's saying to them. Just get at peace, regardless of whose fault. Here you are. Now let's make the most of it. And so he says, seek the peace, and seek the peace of that city. For thus saith, verse 8. Now, we get into another line of thinking here, beginning with verse 8. And in essence, there were a bunch of false prophets in that mixture. Notice what he says. For thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, let not your prophets and your diviners that be in the midst of you, so they brought a bunch of them with them, let not them deceive you. Okay, now notice that. Don't let them deceive you. Neither hearken to your dreams, which you cause to be dreamed. You know, we live in a world of deception. You notice that? Turn your TV on if you haven't noticed that. Watch some of the advertisements, you know. This is the greatest. You know, they can get by with almost anything except just a few blatant lies in advertisement today. They can tell you this is the greatest laxative or the greatest whatever it may be. And it's probably worthless as whatever. You know, we live in a time, an age, a world of deception. But you know the greatest deception? The greatest deception is when we deceive ourselves and lie to ourselves. I'm not the biggest realist, but I try not to be an idealist. I try to deal with reality as much as I can. You know, when I was a kid, growing up, younger, I was always the shortest in my class. And you know, you get to that age where the girls have outgrown the boys anyway, and so I always had these girls that were taller than me. But then when I got, I don't know, 15, 16, 17, and got as tall as I'm going to get, always prior to that I wished I was taller. You know, I had a brother that was 6'4", and I'm thinking, what happened to me? You know, and so I've always thought, boy, what would it be like if I was 6'4"? And of course, then I set the microphone up for Marty a while ago, and I'm looking up at that thing. I'm never going to be 6'4". I guess if I had my knees replaced and my hips and they put those expansion things in there, maybe, you know, maybe I could grow another foot. There's a lot of things that you and I have to accept. I don't mean be a defeatist. I don't mean just give up. But sometimes we have to accept reality. We have to accept it as it is and not deceive ourselves. That's the biggest deception. So he's saying, don't listen to these prophets that are among you. And evidently there were some preachers and prophets in this group of captives that were saying, don't worry about this. We're going to go home in a couple of months. Don't settle down. Don't get involved. Keep your bags packed. You know, keep that bag packed. We're just going to live in a tent for a little while. We're going back to Jerusalem. And God, through Jeremiah, says, no, you're not. No, you're not. And sometimes we just have to accept reality. Verse 9, for they prophesy falsely unto you in my name. I have not sent them, saith the Lord. Now, here's where he gets down to the nitty-gritty with them. For thus saith the Lord, that after 70 years, whoa, you know, if I were 5 and somebody said something about 70 years, of course I wouldn't have a concept of what 70 years was at 5 years old. But if I'm 40 and somebody says something about 70 years, see, 70 and 40, carry the 1, what was that, 110 years? I'm probably not going to be there. 70 years is a long time. Very first words, for thus saith the Lord, that after 70 years be accomplished at Babylon, I will visit you, and notice this, and perform my good word. That is a tremendous statement. Now, he just said, don't get your hopes up listening to these false preachers right now that's saying you're going home next month. You're having some dreams right now. Oh, man, I'm dreaming I'm back in Jerusalem. I'm in my apartment. The windows are open. I can hear the priest singing. I smell that beautiful, oh wait, maybe Jerusalem doesn't smell that beautiful. I remember the last time I was there, the hotel I was in was right on a busy thoroughfare, and at 4:30 in the morning, the dump trucks are running back and forth, getting ready to load and unload. And somehow at that time, they had missed this clean air thing, and all you could smell was that diesel from those, oh gosh. But they're dreaming, and God says, don't pay attention to that stuff. But he says, 70 years, and I'm going to perform my good word. I'm going to do what I have promised. 70 years will be accomplished on Babylon, and I will perform my good word toward you in causing you to return to this place. He says, you're going to return. Maybe not you, but your kids, your grandkids, your great-grandkids, they're going to do this. They're going to get back. What you've started, they will continue. And always remember that as parents and especially as grandparents. What you've started, what you've been to them, what you're developing in their precious forming years and later on, and your encouragement and your money and support, they will carry on some of who you are and what you started. So Facebook can't hear this. Your kids may disappoint you, but a lot of times your grandkids will carry on, and your great-grandkids. Now, verse 11. Notice he said, in causing you to return to this place. Verse 11. And this is a beautiful verse. I'm sure everybody has read or heard this. Multiple sermons have been preached on this verse. This is a great, powerful verse. God says in verse 11, for I know. Now, we could stop right there, but let me read the entire verse. For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord. Thoughts of peace and not of evil, and to give you an expected end. And one translation translates that a future and a hope. But he says here, God says, I know. Do you know? I don't know. I don't know what a day may bring. I don't know about tomorrow. I don't know what tomorrow may hold. I don't know even some of the decisions that I make today. Are they the right ones? I don't know. I don't know. I can make my best guess based on what I do know, but I don't know. But God knows. He is the one who does know. He's the one who knows about you. He's the one who knows about tomorrow. He's the one who holds you and tomorrow in his hand. And he says here to them, I know. Now, let's wrap this up and draw this to a conclusion, and let's see if I can get back to my title, when you walk into a room. So you see, God tells them, you go into that city, go to that place, settle down, build houses, raise families, do all of this, and bring peace. Bring peace to that. And then he talks about there in that last verse, I'm giving you a future and a hope. I have a plan for you, and it's the best plan. It's a good plan. It's a good word. Note, I love that thought, good word. What we talk about in the New Testament about Jesus, the gospel, which is the good news, the good word. So here's my application for all of us. When you and I, when we walk into a room, when we walk into a place, we need to realize who we are and what we carry with us into that room. When you walk into a room, it can be filled with anybody. It can be filled with all kinds of people that don't like you and don't like God. But just remember, you're bringing something into that room from God. And it doesn't have to be a room. It can be out there on the job site or whatever. You're bringing something in there that some of those people don't have. You're bringing peace. You've got peace. You've got peace with God. And you've got peace with yourself through the Lord Jesus Christ. You bring a peace into every place you step your foot into. And you're bringing a hope. You may not have all the answers. You may not know what the answers are for yourself in some cases, much less for other people. But you bring a hope into that room. I don't care if you feel like, man, I don't pray enough, I don't go to church enough, I don't do this enough, I don't do that enough. It doesn't matter. When you walk into any place, this is what you bring with you. And that's going to, it's just going to fall off into other people's lives. It's going to bless them. And sometimes you don't even have to say anything. You can just be you. And when you go into wherever you go, you're bringing that peace of God, and you're bringing that hope of a good future because of Jesus. And that's going to rub off on somebody. Remember that. May we stand.